On behalf of the City Commission, our new manager, our city clerk, I would like to welcome everybody to the first meeting of our new year, 2019. Today is January 9th, 2019. It is now 9 a.m. I will now call this meeting to order. Before we get started, I would like to wish everyone a happy new year, and hopefully it's a prosperous one. I would like to welcome our new city manager, Morris Madrid. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Also, I'd like to welcome our new commission seat, number 5, George Zaghetti. Again, welcome aboard. He was officially sworn in on Wednesday, January 3rd, by our city clerk, Renee Canton. But today, we're going to honor him by a ceremonial swearing in by Judge Sanders. So, can we get you up front for opening ceremonies? In Mexico and the County of Sierra, George Joseph Zaghetti, having been duly elected or appointed as Position 5 City Commissioner for a term to expire in March 2020 in the County of Sierra and the State of New Mexico. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States, Constitution and the laws of the State of New Mexico, and faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of your ability, so help you God?
I do.
Now we will move on to introductions, item B. As everyone did notice, we accidentally put in Steve Green as the mayor, but he did resign as of January 1st, 2019. So now I will ask Madam Clerk to please call roll.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead.
Here.
Honorable Kathy Clark.
Here.
Honorable Rolf Heschler.
Here.
Honorable Paul Baca.
Here.
Honorable George Zaghetti.
Here.
Madam Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item B2, silent meditation. At this time, I'd like to ask you to join me for 15 seconds of silent meditation. I would also like for you to keep former Mayor Green in your thoughts and prayers for his health, his continued health, and hopefully he's back up and at 'em very soon. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Manager Madrid, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item B4, the approval of the agenda.
Madam Mayor, there's one thing I would like to change, if it's okay with you, I have a comment that I'd like to make about accounts payable, so I'd like to pull that separately from the consent calendar if possible.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd also like to request a change,
Okay.
and that is to, under items F, combine 1 and 2, and under item G, combine 1 and 2 as they're the same parties in both events. Additionally, Mayor Pro Tem, I would like to not do the executive session today, mainly because we'd like to catch Manager Madrid up on the issues, and he hasn't had an opportunity to do so. So I'd like to postpone item K under executive session until our next meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda as
Madam Mayor,
approved?
also, yes, I would like to pull the City Commission regular minutes from November 14th from the consent calendar. There were some errors on there that needed to be corrected.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda as noted?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, are we pulling the minutes of November 14th completely for a rewrite?
Yeah, there are corrections that need to be made.
So you want to pull completely, not in separate discussion?
Well, we can amend it.
We
but
can.
would need to discuss it separately.
So you want it to stay on the agenda, but
Stay
just
on the-
taken out of the consent calendar?
Right.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So now do I have a motion to approve the agenda as noted?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as noted. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. The next item on the agenda is item C,
Item 5.
number 5, B5, reorganization, selection of a mayor and a mayor pro tem.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a nomination of Sandra Whitehead as mayor of the City of Truth and Consequences for the remainder of this term, which is 1 year and 2 months.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve Sandra Whitehead as the mayor for the next 14 months. Is there any further discussion or any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate
Welcome, Mayor.
I appreciate your thoughtfulness and consideration in letting me be the mayor and your trust in me. Thank you. The next item is Mayor Pro Tem. Do we have a nomination for Mayor Pro Tem?
Mayor Whitehead, I'd like to make that nomination.
Okay.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Clark to serve as our mayor pro tem for the same time period.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Any other nominations? Well, it looks like do we have a vote? All those in favor of
Aye.
Commissioner Clark being Mayor Pro Tem? Aye.
Aye.
As long as you stay around.
Oh, thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda this morning is item C, comments from the public. Do I have any comments from the public? Always welcomed. It's not working?
Now it's working.
Hi,
Okay.
Ron. All you
Let's
have to
start
do is turn
again.
the button on.
Okay, good morning, Commissioners. Ron Fenn, 316 North Bow Street. And I am come to speak on a couple of issues. Number one being that the variances that are being discussed this morning under this public hearing are a violation of our municipal code. As you are all sworn to obey and enforce the municipal code requires that there is a planning and zoning board. There is no exception for there not being a planning and zoning board. And this issue needs to be brought before the planning and zoning board. Therefore, every variance and every planning and zoning issue that this board decides to override the code is a violation of the municipal code and could be overturned, and perhaps every decision made by this group could be overturned. The Planning and Zoning Commission, which is established under Section 11-22, is unequivocal in its mandate. It says a municipal planning and zoning commission is hereby established. It also has much language within it that says they must and they shall. These are not terms that are discretionary. And you are the ones that are supposed to be making final decisions, but the preliminary decisions must be made by a planning and zoning board, not by the city commission. you cannot take the place of 5 other brains and the amount of time that's spent in looking at these issues and following the proper procedures to ensure that this community is protected as best possible. Secondly, and I'm glad, Mr. Heschler, that you postponed, but you need to eliminate this discussion of 450 Riverside under the exception for the Open Meetings Act. Any discussion, because this is not about a purchase. I spoke to the owner of the property yesterday, and this has nothing to do with a purchase of property, and it's not been established by the city. Therefore, this needs to be eliminated or discussed in open session only.
Thank you, Mr. Finn.
And I am putting in an application for the Planning and Zoning Board.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments from?
Good morning, Commissioners and Mayor. Congratulations, Sandy and Kathy. First question is, when are y'all planning on having another town hall meeting? The other thing is, I'm going to tell this story for the 3rd time. Only difference is it's a different couple from a different state who went to the golf course, went into the building. You can't call a pro shop, you can't call a clubhouse, and nobody was there for them to pay. So we told them, just put your clubs on a cart, go play golf, come back. If somebody's there, pay. Otherwise, don't worry about it. Now, what story do they take back to their state about TRC and the golf course? I thought I'd just give you that FYI. 3rd time. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Are there any other public comments this morning? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, item D, response to public comments. Do we have any response to public comments this morning? Commissioner Heschler.
Just as to Mr. Pecoric, I just wanted to let you know that we are working on the golf course issues right now. I've met at least on 2 occasions with the golf course. I've met at least on 2 occasions with the Golf Course Advisory Board. We've got a plan of action that we're getting ready to implement. I also have a meeting today with the city manager to discuss this further. So I'm hoping we're going to address some of your issues, and I appreciate you bringing them forth, but we'll try our best to deal with those things as expediently as we can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Commissioner Clark.
in response to the public forum request, that's been your specialty.
Yes.
So I would recommend that Rod have a chat with our new mayor. Oh, sorry, you're not hearing me. So about the public forum, it was Mayor Whitehead who actually started that process a few years ago. So I would highly recommend that you get with her and we'll work another one out, because it's a very, very good thing to do. I agree.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Clark.
Madam Mayor, I would also like to respond to Mr. Finn's comments on the Planning and Zoning Board. First of all, the Planning and Zoning Board is composed of people who volunteer to be on that board. The City Commission cannot name people and force them to serve on the board. Okay? The fact that there is no board is not the doings of the City Commission. The lack of a Planning and Zoning Board is due to the fact that we have not had anyone step forward. Well, I haven't seen there or heard that anybody at City Hall has received an application. Right, okay, we have one application. I had notified the city clerk several years ago that I would be willing to take on a position on the P&Z as well as my position on the Public Utilities Advisory Board. But we have never at any time had more than 1 or 2 names on file. of people that are willing to serve on that board. If we do not have a planning and zoning board here, it is the fault of the citizens who have not come forward to help out. And this is by no means an attempt by the city commission to get around the law.
Thank you, Commissioner Zaghetti. Do we have any other responses this morning? Hearing none, we will now move on to item E, the consent calendar. The consent calendar consists of 1, City Commission special meeting minutes, October 22nd, 2018. Item E2, City Commission regular minutes, November 14th, 2018. Item E3, City Commission regular minutes, December 12th, 2018. And E4, accounts payable, December 18th, 2018. December 2018, excuse me.
Madam Mayor, we pulled 2 of those.
Okay.
Okay.
We pulled November 14th, number 2, and we
Right.
pulled November
Yeah,
4
And now we have to have a motion to approve the consent calendar. We approved
of
the
1 and
agenda.
3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as previously noted, pulling item 2 for discussion, and then item 4 also for discussion?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item E1 and E3, and then item E2 will be separately discussed, and item E4 will be separately discussed. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. The next item on the agenda is item F, 1 and 2. Although they are listed separately, they will be heard as one item.
Wait.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's
Okay.
okay, we're just out of practice.
Out of practice, yes. Okay. E2. Thank you, Jay.
Okay. On page 6 of the minutes for November 14th, in the discussion of the tri-state, the new Sierra Electric contract, there are a number of figures there, and they're listed as percents, and I believe those values should be in cents, not percents. Like the 8.3% should be 8.3 cents rather than percent. There's another, the 7.99, and later on there's a 0.03. Those should all be values in cents.
Commissioner Sturgetti, you're absolutely correct. Because I was in that discussion, and they are cents, they are not percentages. So all of them, except for the 21% increase, the rest of them should be in dollars and cents. And it was 7.999 cents to 8.3, and then Electric Co-op passes on a 0.003 cent to us, not a percentage. Do we want to make those adjustments right now? Can we do that?
We can make those if we want to approve them as amended. We'll fix everyone.
So we can approve them as amended,
Are there any
contingent.
other changes, or is that it?
Was that the only change that you had?
That was the only
So I
change I
need to
had.
make a motion according to the changes that Commissioner Zaghetti has articulated. Page 6.
Do I have a motion to approve the November 14th minutes as noted by Commissioner Zaghetti?
I will make that motion.
And I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to approve the City Commission regular minutes of November 14th, 2018 with the corrections as noted. Do I have any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The next item is consent calendar E4, accounts payable, December 18th. Commissioner Clark had a question.
I just had a comment that I would like to make, that our new manager, unless you have abilities that I'm unaware of, hasn't really had a lot of time to sit down and look at our budgets and look at our accounts payable and some of those things. And there are a few that are a little bit off of the budget that we have that are a little concerning to me. So I would like to just ask that at some point in the next month that our new manager be able to get with our finance director and get up to speed on what some of those issues are and see if we can't get them corrected.
Commissioner, you're absolutely right, and that's one of the reasons that I've asked our finance director to be here today. We've spent some time with a concern that I already have, and we'll be spending a lot more time together. So a month from now, I'll have a lot better information for you.
And you sit right next to me, remember?
Yes, I remember.
All right, thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. Now, do we have a motion to accept the accounts payable with Commissioner Clark's comments? Because we didn't approve those earlier, right? 'Cause
Well, we
pulled
need
those.
to pay our bills, so we're going to have to say yes.
Okay. All right.
I'll
And
make
do I
that
have a
motion.
second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve E4 accounts payable December 2018 with the comments noted as Mayor Pro Tem suggested. Next item is item 4F1 and 2. Again, these are public hearings. We will be holding them together. I will now open the public hearings. This will be done as a batter shell, as per noted by our city attorney. All those that have signed in will all be sworn in, and I will ask you to stand, and the clerk will swear you in at the same time. If for some reason you have not signed in as a proponent or opponent or the public, please do so. The first public hearing is request for a plat amendment at 1700 East Riverside Drive. Applicants are John and Gail Jones. Tracy Burnett will be submitting this, or addressing this. And the item F2 is a public hearing request for a variance at 1700 East Riverside Drive to allow subdivided lot to meet the road standard for the area. Applicant again is John and Gail Jones, and this will be addressed by Tracy Burnett, our grant projects coordinator.
And Madam Mayor, maybe I can make a couple of helpful comments for this process.
Thank you. Attorney Rubin?
Yes, yes, it was my suggestion that we combine the two public hearings. I think it makes sense instead of having one public hearing just for the plat amendment and having a separate one for the variance. Although it's better to put them all together. The evidence would be more consistent that way. And as you mentioned, Madam Mayor, this is the batter shell process, so it's an evidentiary hearing. So people can testify as we've done in past hearings. But maybe just also for the commission to be thinking about this, as the background information indicates on in your agenda packet, the variance is requested because, as according to the background information, says the variance is requested because no streets in the neighborhood have sidewalk and some do not have curb and gutter. What's at play here is section 15-15-A2 under the subdivision code, under paragraph 2. It does read lots to be created have direct, legal, unobstructed access to an existing city maintained and paved street with curb, gutter, and sidewalk. So that's the general rule. The variance ordinance comes into play as section 11-5-5, where in discussing the provisions for a variance, if there's a finding the subject property is irregular, narrow, shallow, or steep, or otherwise have physical conditions where application requirements of this code would result in practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship to the owner in the use of his land or building, and that's where a variance would be considered. So I'm bringing this up to your attention now so you can think about the evidence to whether the legal justification for variance is existent within the evidence that's going to be presented today. That's but I bring it up before the evidence is presented. So I spoke with Ms. Burnett this morning. I want to make sure I'm correct here in my analysis of when we talk about legally about the ordinances I just articulated. Correct. Okay. All right. That was my.
Thank you, Attorney. Thank you, Attorney Rubin, for your explanation. Okay, could I have the proponents would be John and Gail Jones and Randy Spear,
And I also have the opponents would be Ron Fenn and Ariel Dartery, if I could get you all to stand. And again, John and Gail Jones also signed in as the public. And again, Tracy Burnett. The clerk will now swear you in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Miss Tracy, this will be the staff presentation.
Good morning, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. Congratulations to both Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem. We're here before you for a summary plot amendment for the lot split and the variance at 1700 East Riverside. Our applicant is John and Gail Jones. The applicant is applying for a summary plot amendment to split his property at 1700 East Riverside, and at the same time is applying for the variance, as Jay mentioned, for access to city streets with curb, gutter, and sidewalk. Both lots to be created do have direct, legal, and unobstructed access to existing city-maintained paved street, and they have direct, unobstructed access to city existing utilities. Variance is requested because the streets within the neighborhood do not have sidewalk, curb, and gutter, and it would definitely be a financial hardship to request a residence to pave or to do the curb, gutter, and sidewalk around an entire city street just to meet that within city code. All of their required application information has been submitted, and we've researched the application and found no reason for the application not to be approved at this time. So I stand for any questions.
Madam Mayor.
Let me make one suggestion also, Ms. Burnett. Can you also discuss the notices that went out?
Oh, yes, a public hearing notice was placed to the public and posted both on the city property as well as in the newspaper, and we did 7 certified mailings. It is required to mail out certified letters within 100 feet of the property, and we did the 7 certified mailings that were within 100 feet. And I did verify with the county assessors the mailing of those properties.
And Miss Tracy, did each one of the certified letters that you sent out, were they all received? Do you know?
6 out of those 7.
6 out of those 7?
Yes.
Thank you. Do we have any further?
I have a question.
Commissioner Clark.
Ms. Burnett, a few years ago, I looked at Riverside as an option to create a bike path, and did some conversation with our street department plus the Department of Tourism in the state. And my understanding, and I'm asking for verification if you know the answer to this question, is that that street is just barely within the limits wide-wise that it can be, and to narrow it down at all. And I'm asking this to you, Attorney Rubin, we may be getting ourselves in a little bit of problem if we haven't researched that again. And it's just a memory that I've got, but that was something that stuck in my mind because I wanted to put, a bike path on the side, and we went out and measured it, and there was no extra road. So it would almost have to be a condemnation on private properties to put in curb and gutter.
And that is something, the width of the road in relation to curb and gutter in that area is not something I am familiar with. But
thank you. I'm just putting it out there because that's what I've got in my memory bank.
I don't have any comment to that either. That's something we can always research at the road, but this is...
It's a concern to me.
I heard that.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Is there any other questions regarding the presentation by Tracy? If not, we'll move on to our next. Thank you, Tracy. The next will be the proponents. The first proponent is John Jones.
Thank you.
Good morning.
So, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say. I mean, we've submitted the application, and the only reason the variance is there, from what I understand, is because of the sidewalk and the gutter. And there's none on that road. There's a couple, but most of it couldn't even be put in. They've allowed so many variances along there that people park right along the road or out in the road even, and you have to go around them along there. So we're really not asking for anything special. for what's going on in that area. And as far as the bike path, I don't see how you'd ever get one down through there. That road's so narrow, and then, like you say, some of those lots are so small, people park out on the road at night, and they're out in the road half the time, so.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
That it?
Yes. The next proponent is Gail Jones. Do you have any comments that you need to make? Would like to make? No? And the next one is Randy Spear. Do you have any comments that you would like to make?
Congratulations, Mayor.
Thank you.
Congratulations, all of you. Yeah, I live on Arrowhead Road, and I put myself down as a proponent. I actually am undecided because I don't understand what he wants to do with the property once he's got it subdivided. If he's going to put trailer homes out there, if he's going to build a regular home, or what exactly he has planned. So I'd like some clarification on that if possible.
Thank you. Tracy, could you answer that question?
Thank you, Mayor. In response to the question, the applicant is looking at dividing the property and maybe in the future looking at selling one portion of the divided property. As far as any type of future development on that property, that too would have to go through at the planning and zoning level, and any development of that property would have to be within our standards.
Thank you. So at this time, we're basically just looking at dividing the property, correct?
Dividing the property, correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon, could we ask that question to Mr. Jones?
Sure. Mr. Jones, could you?
We're retired, and we're getting ready to start traveling some, so we're wanting to reduce our effort of keeping up the property. So the piece that I'm dividing up is the front half of the property, and it's also the riverfront. The riverfront requires mowing regularly so that we stay within, the regulations for the city. So it made sense to just take that front half, divide it off, sell it. So that's one less thing I got to worry about around there. And then we're going to get somebody to take care of the upper yard is all. As far as what would go there, it would be to code. I mean, right now it's just zoned for a single family house, that whole property. So I'm assuming that would just stay the same. And if they got anything other than that, they'd have to get some sort of variance, I would think, or what, some sort of approval. So.
Did that answer your question? Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Spear, did that answer your questions?
Absolutely. Nice thing as a proponent.
Thank you. The next is our opponents. First one is Ron Fenn.
Yes, Commissioners, the reason I am opposing this is that I've already explained. This is a violation of our municipal code. You folks, again, are charged with the municipal code. Mr. Zaghetti's suggestion that just because nobody has volunteered that we can violate the law. The law is the law. It has to either be changed, it has to be or abided by, especially by you folks, because you are the people who the rest of the community looks for when they get charged with violations of codes and say, why should we obey codes when you don't? Concerning the variation or this variance for the sidewalk and curb, the very reason that streets in our city don't have curbs and gutters, which they should have according to our code, is because you folks have been granting variance after variance after variance. The city will never improve itself as long as we give variances for things that should be required under a comprehensive plan that says that the reason for this is to improve the quality of life and the appearance and the attractiveness of our community so that we can maybe someday fill in some of the empty homes in our community. As long as you give variances, nothing will ever change. Every property that comes before you that says, well, we want to be just like everybody else, and violate our code. Get rid of the code, folks. Let's not have codes. Then nobody will be able to violate them, and you won't have to meet and listen to variance requests. But in the meantime, until you do that, until you ditch the municipal code, you are sworn to obey it and uphold it. And the reason that there is no planning and zoning is because you folks don't take the recommendations in favor of a favored businessman, for instance, and say, oh, well, you know, no, we know that it's wrong. We know that it's not legal to do this, but we're going to do it anyway because he's a good guy. We'll give him what he wants. These are violations that are untenable, and they're going to destroy our city faster than anything else that I can think of. Secondly, I noticed in the discussion or in the application here that there is a recommendation from staff to pass this variance. Staff should not be making recommendations in public hearing situations. This is totally inappropriate, and Ms. Burnett is not a 5-member planning and zoning board. And for her to make a recommendation like that is simply to add weight to giving a variance that should not have been given in the first place. None of this should happen until there's a planning and zoning. And if you folks would stop holding hearings and making variances and giving planning and zoning required rulings, then there will be no planning and zoning. If you say, you know what, sorry folks, we cannot do that until there's a planning and zoning board, there will be a planning and zoning board. It's up to you. Don't put it on the people. The buck stops right there.
Thank you, Mr. Finn. Our next opponent is Ariel Daugherty.
Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to all the new members of the commission and activity in our town. I'm actually sitting sort of on the fence, kind of being a proponent and an opponent. I think the request is very reasonable. So I'm going to read my testimony and then sort of answer some other questions of things that have come up here. I'm here because and for the beavers. I stopped last week to see how they are progressing on building their new dam. They put logs and sticks across the low river at this time of year. It was hard to park in order to catch a glimmer of their ingenuity, so I settled for a spot on the far side of the road from the Rio Grande. That's when I spotted a white sheet of paper attached to a fence in an odd angle. That paper was the notice about this hearing, and I would like to remark it says hearing, it doesn't say hearings. So finding out that there's sort of two simultaneous hearings here is an added complication. One had to be standing right in front of this notice to catch any core information and read its contents. I checked with a few neighbors in the area. No one knew anything about the proposed subdivision or this public hearing. This property sits in an RR zone, the Riverside Residential District. It's a special zoning for this particular area. From the 2014 comprehensive plan, it reads, the district is intended for a low-density residential district comprised mostly of single-family dwellings. That could also be why the beavers like this particular spot along the river. The strip of land along the Rio Grande, starting at the foot of Arrowhead, where it junctions with East Riverside, all the way to down where Riverside bends slightly to the north, and then it goes east again.
that part of the river is undeveloped and natural at this point. There's no building structure or anything on it. That's unique along parts of the river. As such, this stretch of land may be 30 feet wide from the road to the edge of the river and maybe some 1,500 feet long along the road is unique in the eastern section of the Rio Grande in our city. I request that the city, in making this determination, make a caveat in this subdivision that this riverside strip of land at 1700 East Riverside perpetually remain as open space to never be built on. Infrequently do properties provide such opportunity for the city to protect a small section of land for the public good. Understanding the city's process in this plat request and understanding whether all codes are properly followed has been a challenge. The process to notify neighbors, 7 as identified on the planning application form, implies it is following section 15.8 variances. It is curious, given the mailing, that no green cards from the return receipts existed in the file that I was shown. The code here, however, requires that all property owners within 300 feet of the Jones property be notified. Some 8 more properties should have also received notices. Numerous people whom I talked with received no notice. But if this process is following section 1515 as stated in the hearing notice, 3 items are also missing from the file as required by that code. 1, there exists no letter of credit for the funds to cover connection of water and waste lines. 2, there is no documentation from the Sierra County Assessor's Office that the taxes are not owed on the property. And 3, a release should be supplied from the Public Utility Board and all utility companies which are proposed as providers for the subdivision. Those are written right in the code. Maybe it is time to reinvestigate the Planning and Zoning Committee that can be more on top of such details and maintain expertise to ensure all codes are fully followed, and hence they make educated and informed recommendations to the city's commission. A number of us during many civic planning processes, and in particular the latest 2014 comprehensive plan, suggested ideas to preserve and enhance the riverfront with things like the Riverwalk and other kinds of ideas. But nothing exists within the comprehensive plan, much to our aggravation, about the Rio Grande as a center point of community activity, enjoyment, and preservation. In the opinion of many, this plan neglects the city's greatest asset. Again, if you choose now to go ahead with a decision despite these gaps in the process that I outline, I urge the land in this property on the riverside of the road be set aside as permanently open for all of the community to enjoy the river, and of course, those wonderfully persistent beavers.
Thank you, Ms. Ariel. Do we have any questions or comments from the commission?
Ms. Doherty, it is so nice to have you back in this building. Maybe not always agree with you, but yeah, it's just so nice to see you again. Thank you. Yeah, I'll make a comment when we get to the next part.
Okay. Do we have any other comments from any of the commissions? Do we have any comments from staff regarding any of the proponents' comments or opponents' comments?
Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, all required documents were submitted. Not all documents are just set within a file for public. We did the agenda stuff, but there is a file that is available for public. All certified mailings are within there. Receipt of taxes that are current are paid, as well as established utility connections and up-to-date utility bill paid as well. As regards to the mailing area, section 11-7-2, hearings of the Planning and Zoning Commission, which diverts to you guys at this point. B1 for requirement of notice to property owners. it does say within 100 feet. And I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from staff? Community, commission?
Madam Mayor, I just want to provide my assurance that staff was diligent. I did sit down with them and review the file with Tracy and with the attorney, and all of the due diligence has been met.
Thank you. Ms. Ariel?
I specifically went to the clerk's office to see the file and was not shown the items that I referred to. So I don't know whether there's a secret unpublic file for these documents, but I would really seriously question the procedure that you all are handling this. I never saw, as I said, any of the return receipt cards or the other 3 documents that I referred to. And I had to come back twice because the file wasn't, the limited file wasn't even in the office.
Ms. Tracy, could you answer that question as to where the file is and who can see the file and what they need to do to view these records that are requested?
So the full file with all documents were in preparation for the agenda. As far as at the clerk's office, they were in the middle of putting the agenda together, and I believe the documents for the agenda purpose were in the process of being scanned at that time. The agenda had not been put out yet to the public at that point, so it was just the notice of public hearing that had been posted. As far as the entire file, in the planning and zoning, and I believe an IPRA request, would by all means present that file over to the clerk's office for viewing at that time.
Thank you.
I'd like to make another comment. One of the things that I am highly concerned about in public hearings is that there is no time for anybody to rebut that is not here. And I am proposing that there is a wait period of at least 1 meeting before an action is taken following a public hearing. As we've seen many times before with more important issues, for instance, and sometimes not so important issues, there is a period of time before a group makes a decision on a public hearing for input from people that cannot be there. Now, we've identified at least 8 other property owners that should have been identified. But because they haven't been, you may be making a decision that violates that section of the Planning and Zoning Board. In the same token, we had a hearing recently on OHVs and ATVs that had the decision not been made that day to pass that ordinance, we may have avoided a referendum election right now, because the analysis of the information that this passed on turned out to be non-viable. We don't need input from other states, other communities.
Ron, let's get back to.
Let's get back to this
public hearing, please.
Public hearing. This is what. Well, this is exactly what we're talking about. It's public hearings, okay? But your rush to pass things with 2 people speaking, 3 people speaking, when there are 8 other property owners that have not been notified, maybe they have a legitimate objection that might sway the decision. But if you don't give them the opportunity by leaving a period of time, like at least one meeting before you vote on this issue, then you are short-circuiting the representation of the people of this community.
Thank you, Ron. Attorney Rubin, do you have any questions, comments to add to any of The opponents, proponents, staff?
I may, but I think the appropriate thing would be to close the public hearing, then we get to G1, G2, then we get to
Okay,
the
thank you.
issues, okay?
Manager Madrid, do you have any questions, comments on anything that you've heard this morning by our proponents, opponents, or staff?
No, I think that the process has been followed, the record is complete, and you're ready to go to the next step.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, comments, or anything from the commission regarding any questions from the proponents, opponents, or staff? If none, at this time, I will close our public hearings, and move on to item G1 and 2, ordinance resolutions and zoning. The first one is G1, discussion action request for a plat amendment at 1700 East Riverside Drive. Applicants John and Gail Jones. Again, Tracy Burnett will be our presenter, is the grants project coordinator. And item G2, discussion action request for a variance at 1700 East Riverside Drive to allow subdivided lot to meet the road standard for the area. Again, applicant is John and Gail Jones. Tracy Burnett.
Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, I think we put everything out there within the public portion, so at this time, I'll just stand for any further questions and request the action.
I would just clarify one point. I guess the most important thing, I want to make sure we're following the notice requirement. I think you articulated 11-7-2, the 100 feet proposition.
Yes, did you want to?
No, you should. I just want to make sure we're following the right. Okay. So I just want to make sure, looking at that 100-foot zone, are you confident that all the property owners within that 100 feet zone have been notified?
Yes, correct, and I did verify a secondary time with the county.
That's the most important job to have.
Are there any questions, comments from the commission? Manager Madrid, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, my only comment is that I do recommend your approval. Staff does recommend your approval.
Do I have a motion to approve items G1 and G2 as presented by Tracy Burnett, our projects coordinator?
Chair Whitehead, I'd like to make that motion.
Thank you. I have a motion to approve items G1 and G2. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
We have 4 ayes. Paul, you did vote aye, correct? We have 4 ayes and 1 no. Motion's carried.
Thank
So
you.
Mayor, when I vote no, it's been kind of the procedure that I explain why, and that the rest of the commission does also. I am very concerned about what I talked to you about, the road, and we have not really looked at Riverside for a long period of time. And the concern is putting a bunch of variances in there if maybe there's something else that we ought to be considering. And I also am concerned a little bit about the coding on it, even though I'm sure that you've read through it, but I just wanted that on the record that I'm not confident about that very narrow street, and that it is right next to the river, and there is some real validity for wanting to maybe protect it in some way or form. Thank you.
I'd like to recommend one additional supplemental motion. As I indicated, the section 11-5-5 indicates the variance, may be granted. When the commission makes a finding that adhering to the code would result in the practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship to the owner, I think it would be good to have a motion to actually articulate that particular ground as to why you granted the variance. So we have that in the minutes.
So do we have to amend our motion or just do another motion?
I would do a separate motion. I think the motion is fine, what you've already done. I'm suggesting as a supplement that we actually have a record to make that finding pursuant to our code.
The finding to 11-5-5, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion that we have looked at 11-5-5 and do find that coding, the amendment, as noted by Attorney Rubin, correct and right?
You can have that motion, Mayor, yes.
Okay. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to the finding of 1155 for the coding. Is there any further comments, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
We have 4 ayes and 1 nay. Motion carries. The next item on our agenda, moving along, is item G3, discussion action, resolution number 22, 2018/2019, authorizing and approving submission of a completed application for financial assistance and project approval for the New Mexico Finance Authority Public Project Revolving Funds for Law Enforcement Equipment. I asked Tracy Burnett to come and do this presentation. Chief, could I ask you to step up with her too, please?
Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Commissioners, we're formally requesting to approve the resolution that will authorize us to submit a completed application to the Public Project Revolving Loan Fund out of NMFA. Funds would be used to finance the purchase of in-car camera system and body cameras for our police officers, as well as a much-needed repeater so that their radios will work in the areas that they're not getting picked up. At this time, I stand for any questions, and of course, we have the chief here as well.
Do we have any questions regarding Tracy's presentation? Manager Madrid.
Madam Mayor, in a discussion that we had yesterday, I know that you had a concern related to the purpose of the fund and the approval of the tax that the voters took back when the tax was approved. And I think that this application and the use of this particular funding is absolutely appropriate in this case. But I did want to inform you that one of the reviews that I did, and I did this with the finance director, is the financial position of that fund, because it would obligate, in the event that there was no reimbursement, it would obligate that fund for a period of time. And what I found was there may have been some charges to that fund that may not have been appropriate in the past, which would only help this fund and improve its position in the future, but may hurt another fund. And in particular, I'm talking about the payment for the construction of the animal shelter. So the question is the animal shelter public safety or not? That seems like a questionable area. I'm going to look into it further and get clarification as to how that took place. If anything, it'll help this fund and enhance the GRT fund, but it'll hurt another fund. That has not yet been resolved, and I think that needed to be disclosed today. I'm in full support of this application, and I think that should proceed, but I think you need to be informed about this.
Thank you, Manager Madrid. Do we have an actual an amount of what this is going to cost us, and is this a grant, or is this actual purchase out of the fund?
So our full application amount is for $103,054.54. The Public Project Revolving Loan Fund would review our application, and then they would assess whether or not we would qualify for any disadvantage funding, similar to the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund, where they might forgive a portion of the loan. If they choose to not forgive any portion of the loan, we would qualify for a percent on the loan of 0.12% interest, so less than 1% interest on the loan itself.
Thank you, Ms. Tracy. Is there any other questions? Any further questions from the commission? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve resolution number 22, 2018-19, authorizing and approving submission of a completed application?
Manager Madrid, if we made the application and we determined that it would have an effect on something in the future in the funding department, do we have to accept that funding?
No, this action is to authorize the application. It is not to authorize any obligation.
Thank you. Then I'll make the motion to go forward with the application.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 22, 2018-19, authorizing and approving submission of a completed application for financial assistance and project approval to the New Mexico Finance Authority Public Project Revolving Funds for law enforcement equipment. This is just, again, an application. Is there any further discussion, questions, or anything? Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Honorable Senator Whitehead.
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Heschler.
Yes.
Honorable Kathy Clark.
Aye.
Honorable Paul Baca.
Yes.
Honorable George Zagetti.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. The next item on our agenda this morning is item H1, unfinished business. Discussion action, special use permit for mounting Verizon antennas on the painted water tank at the end of West 2nd Street. Applicant is Amy McKenzie.
Good morning. Nice to see everybody again. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I am here on behalf of Verizon Wireless. My name is Amy McKenzie. I'm with Black & Veatch, and I represent Verizon Wireless. This is my fourth time before the commission. We started the process back in February of last year, and our proposal is a special use permit application to mount 6 antennas at approximately 45 feet onto the water tower that's right outside this door. And at the last meeting, we've already had our public hearing. We've had 3 presentation meetings as part of this. And the last step that we had been requested of by the commissioners at our last meeting in November was through Chief Tooley to get a modulation study done, to reaffirm in a third party that we would have, that there would be no interference with any of the existing emergency or police or fire equipment that was on the water tower. We did have that study done at the end of December and provided that to both the city and to the chief. And the conclusion was that there was no harmful interference predicted as a result of Verizon's proposed co-location that would affect any existing operations on the structure. And just to even go one step further, if there was some crazy reason that there was interference, it is Verizon's obligation to mitigate that. So at this point, we respectfully request of the commission that our special use application for Verizon to co-locate on the TRC water tank be approved. And I stand for any questions.
Do I have any questions from the commission?
Sorry.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I know you don't like me at this particular
No.
point. I'm saying that facetiously because I like you, Amy, and I really appreciate your dedication to this project. But we did, I haven't received a note of confidence from our fire chief at this particular point. Apparently, he sent part of that modulation study to an engineering firm to double check it, communication engineers, to make certain that there isn't going to be any interference. And I haven't gotten an answer to that back. So that being said, Commissioners, Mayor, if we were to go ahead and say to Miss Amy that we're good with this because we do need the communications, in our opinion, but that we put an exception that if something comes back from the engineers about the modulation study, and that if Mr. Tooley has a problem with it, that we will have some kind of modification made.
I think that's acceptable.
Mr. Tooley's in the audience. Does he have any questions or comments regarding this?
Oh, I didn't see you there. How about that?
I was in camo today. Madam Mayor, Commissioners, the one thing that was not in the study was the actual noise floor analysis report that needs to be done up there. So our engineers from Advanced Communication are coming down this week to do that noise floor level. And what the noise floor, to give you kind of a rough idea what it is if everybody was in this room talking, it would take more of me to get to talk to you. And that's what happens up there, is the more stuff we have, the higher that noise floor goes. We may run into the possibility that we need so much power from our walkie-talkies to be able to activate our radios. No matter if they're on different frequency, that level of noise goes up there. So we're trying to get a baseline of what the noise floor is up there now that works efficiently for us, to make sure that if things that are added are going to add to that noise floor, but where do we say enough is enough before our radio systems don't work? So that is the analysis that Advanced Communications is doing this week. I left a message this morning. They're supposed to be here today or tomorrow. And then the other deal is do we have a written agreement already? Okay, because there are some items that are in there under his professional certification, point 12, that are in that report, that we just need to make sure that when that happens, that we protect all entities from the county to the city and everybody up there. So if something were to happen, if everything's working fine, they install their equipment, now we have problems, we need to be able to mitigate that to figure out what's that. And I think that needs to make sure we have that in the agreement as well. So I'll stand for any further questions.
So, Mr. Tully, you're adding something else onto my commentary?
From what standpoint? About the big thing is the agreement side. Since we're public safety and they're basically private, we need to make sure that we have the agreement protects both parties, but protects our interest at best, because we are the public safety. We're there. We need to make sure our stuff works. So we just want to make sure we cross the T's and dot the I's and make sure that agreement is correct.
Attorney Rubin?
So we're talking about the special use permit. You can add a couple of conditions you're talking about. The condition that Mr. Toole is talking about. I understand, Mr. Kennedy, you're okay with this. I see you nodding your head.
Yes, that's standard practice in an agreement.
So, Mr. Tully, Mayor, would it be okay to ask Mr. Tully to work with Mr. Rubin and make sure that we get those two conditions put into the contract?
That would be a great idea.
Yeah, I want to make sure, because we've run into this issue, not we directly, but our communications companies run into this before at certain other locations in New Mexico, where a cell company or other companies come in, and then before long, you got 6 or 8 of them there, and then all of a sudden now, public safety stuff doesn't work. Nobody wants to turn their equipment off to figure out where the problem is, and now we've got a legal battle. So we just want to make sure that is taken care of before this.
No, I really appreciate that.
Right, yeah. Any other questions?
Yes,
Mr.
I've got a couple of comments, and I apologize, I am coming into this kind of late in the deal. And well, on this first issue, on the contract, paragraph 8A very specifically says that tenant warrants that its use of the premises will not interfere with those existing radio frequency uses on the property, as long as the existing radio frequency users operate and continue to operate within their respective frequencies, which Ms. McKenzie already alluded to, and I believe that means if a problem comes up, it is then their obligation to correct that problem. So I feel that contract-wise, we are legally obligated to that. I again yield to Attorney Rubin on that issue. But then the other, and if I go to 2 pages down to section 14, and I wanted to make sure I was reading this correctly. Now, the concern I have is the actual structural integrity of the water tower. And again, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm trying to understand all this. So if I understand this right, it says that when you mount the antennas on the tank, you will ensure that the structural integrity is there to resist that the wind load that is to be expected. But later on in that paragraph B, it said that landlord shall be responsible for the cost of all structural modification to the tower to support the allowed wind load surface area. Now, does that mean that when you, it's your responsibility to make sure that the original mounting is structurally sound, but then it becomes the city's responsibility to maintain the structural integrity.
If I might interrupt, there was at one time where the city was going to take that water tank out once it was condemned, because we put the new 1.5 million up on the north side.
Right.
The issue we had as a fire department is that's where we live, at the very top of the tank. So those provisions were just said, hey, we're going to leave the tank there for this time. So that's where that sits at this time.
Yeah, I remember that condom, and that's where I had the concerns about the structural integrity.
Yeah.
But again, we have to maintain that for our own antennas also, so it is.
Right. There is still an obligation as the owner of the tower, which would be the city, to maintain its integrity, because we can only maintain our portion of the tank, which is our appurtenances. So there is still an obligation for the city to maintain the entirety of the tank.
Okay. All right. And okay, I got one final question. This is for Attorney Rubin, and of course it's down at the end of the contract. Here we go. And my question is this just a standard thing that goes in right at the end, section 23 end? Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, it's just the part about waiver of jury trial.
And if I could make an assertion real quick, that's not my lease that you're looking at.
Yeah,
That's actually Gravity.
Oh, that's the Gravity.
Yeah.
I was wondering, because there's, in the packet, there is no lease agreement.
No, there's not.
Okay,
This is
my apologies.
No, it's not a problem. Our leases are very comparable.
Okay.
It's very comparable language.
Yeah.
But I'm only here addressing the special use permit. I completely understand that I still need to enter into a lease agreement with the city or the city's agent. And so once we have the special use permit, then our direction was then to work with Mr. Rubin to finalize an agreement between Verizon and the city.
Okay.
But you're
So I'm actually on the wrong.
No, not at all, not at all. I just want to make sure that it's clear that these are two separate matters, which we completely appreciate. This is just the use of the tower, and then all of those things that you've brought up, which are important and are valid, will be addressed in the contract with the city.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Mayor, if I may. Attorney Rubin, were you working with the city when that water tank was condemned?
Remember
It was
what
done-
happened? I'm very memorable, and how long ago did that happen?
It was before me.
Oh,
Do you
gosh, it's
remember?
been a long
Yeah.
time.
Were you a commissioner when that happened?
Probably 7 or 8 years?
Yes.
At
7 or 8
least.
years ago, maybe?
I was here. I don't remember the specifics, but I was here.
Well, I'm just wondering, Mr. Tooley and Amy brought up, and Commissioner Sergetti, you brought up a good point, I think, and that is, when's the last time we actually looked at the structural integrity of that thing? I mean,
Yeah,
if we can
that I
check
couldn't
this-
tell you. I know that when the tank was condemned for the storage of water, that the pipes were basically connected together up there to bypass the tank, so that whatever the tank has, it has sat there since then. I don't know of any improvement that has been done. I know the police department and our tower was attached to it at one time, came undone, and then the big windstorm, it wound up going down.
Right.
We have since, in the meantime, replaced our antenna and cabling at the very top of the tower. But I don't know any structural
know the
integrity or
structural
anything.
integrity.
It doesn't look like much has been done up there on it at all.
And Verizon will do a structural integrity analysis in advance of any application onto the tank. I mean, we have to protect ourselves as well. So we'll do a structural analysis on the tank to make sure that it is doable.
So we're putting a bunch of caveats into the special use permit?
I don't think it's a caveat or special. It's just it's protocol that we would
structural
do.
integrity, we're looking at the noise level, and that we will know soon.
Yes, we should know at least what the noise floor is. And you also have to remember, everything for Sierra County, all public safety for Sierra County runs through that site up there. So everything public safety up there currently now is all public safety. So I think this is something that other agencies need to be aware of as well. We do everything from SVH to the Sheriff's Office, Police Department, Fire Departments, everybody in the whole county. So I think it's something that they need to be aware of.
Well, public safety is number one, I'm sorry, at least in my book. And we all know that.
Correct.
So if we're looking for structural integrity, we're looking for the information from your engineers on the noise floor.
Yes, they
And
have
also
scrubbed the document now, and that was one of the first things they brought up. They're still in the process of reviewing it, but the first thing they brought up was, we don't have a baseline for the noise floor up there yet. We don't know what that is. Since everything was public safety, just about everything that was put up there was done through advanced communications. But we want them to come back and put that noise floor to say, hey, this is where we're at now. What can we live with before we start having issues with public safety?
So the other one is to just make sure in the agreement between this company and our company that we have the ability, if there is an interference, that
Well, and we need some way to mitigate it quickly. I mean, if we're having interference, we have a problem with public safety, we don't need a month for them to come down.
no, we don't. We need a day, less than a
Exactly.
day.
So we need to just make sure that that is in the agreement, that we can mitigate these problems right away, because when we have radio issues, we mitigate them right away. We had some issues, and I believe Ms. Canton at that time was acting city manager. This was the Saturday before Christmas, Saturday night, and we had some generator issues, and so we spent half the night up there figuring out how we're going to do this, and we mitigated the problem the next day right away, that we basically ran out of fuel in the generator. But we had to do that on a Sunday. So those are the issues that we deal with all the time. We need this stuff mitigated as quickly as possible. If we have an issue, we need to make sure we mitigate it right away.
So how do we handle this?
This is just, that's in the lease, special use permit.
Here's an idea, as Ms. McKenzie acknowledges, the next step would be, if granted the special use permit, the next step would be to go forward with the lease negotiations and hopefully that lease agreement. So maybe the idea might be to approve the special use permit contingent upon an acceptable lease agreement being drafted and signed by the parties. What can happen is during the meantime, while we're drafting up the lease, is that Mr. Tooley can do the studies he's talking about, and if things turn out to be a problem, then we will know that we will not be able to go forward with the lease until these problems are addressed. So maybe that would be the way to do it, is to approve the special use permit contingent upon a lease agreement being successfully negotiated. And that might even apply to H2 when we get to that issue, also, so.
Yeah, because this is just for a special use permit. And then again, we could ask that Chief Tooley and Attorney Rubin get together and work out any details that need to be placed into that agreement, and along with Ms. McKenzie.
And Manager Madrid.
Yeah, and one of the things that we need to look at too is, and I mean, this is, we love this up there. We like to have the amenities of living in where we're at. But the other issue we have to look at, that I look at too, is the more stuff we get up there and the more things we block, we can barely get an engine truck up there. There's a residence that lives up there. So we have to be careful from the fire side to make sure that we're not we need to be able to get up there, do our things, and be able to get down there. There's only one way in and one way down that hill, so that's important to us as well.
And we took that into consideration when we chose our lease area, and we're just a 15 by 15 lease area on the
east side.
Thank you. On the east side. I'm trying to get my orientation, but we appreciate that.
Do we have any further questions or comments?
And I would further assume that, assuming we get to the point that we've negotiated a successful lease, that we would bring back the commission for final approval anyway.
Oh, that would happen, yeah, that would be, right.
So, there's still another safeguard here.
Commissioner Heschler has a question.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank Attorney Rubin for his comments. They were spot on and exactly what I was thinking. The other comment I want to make is that we've had Ms. McKenzie here 4 times now.
Right.
And each time we've changed the game. It's time to quit changing the game. And I think we should go ahead and proceed with the contingent upon what Chief Tooley wants to have done, contingent upon the structural integrity of the water tank itself. And if anything there derails the process, then we can stop the process. This is just a special use permit.
Thank you. Do I hear any further questions or comments? Hearing none, discussion action, special use permit for mounting Verizon antennas on the painted water tank hill at the end of West 2nd Street. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'd make that motion that we approve a special use permit for the mounting of the Verizon antennas on the painted water tank at the end of West 2nd Street, contingent upon the successful completion of a lease agreement with the concerns noted by the commission.
And also the sound cable.
Yeah.
The sound floor.
Yeah, the issues that we have with our.
Yes.
Attorney Rubin, do you need those special conditions listed out?
I don't think so. I think, I've heard the conversations, I know what the agreement, what we talked about, and Mackenzie's aware, and I'm gonna be bringing it back to you anyway, so.
Do I have a second?
I love a second that motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve the special use permit for mounting the Verizon antennas on the painted water tank hill. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll see you back for the lease.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda under unfinished business is item H2, discussion action, special use permit for mounting antennas on the painted water tank hill at the end of West 2nd Street. Applicant is AT&T Mobility with Sean Milks of Gravity Pad being the agent.
Good morning, Commissioners and Mayor Pro Tem. My name is Kevin Winter. I'm an agent with Gravity Pad as well. Sean Milks is at another hearing in Estancia, so apparently there's a lot of Tuesday morning 9 a.m. hearings going on throughout New Mexico, but Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Anyway, glad to be here. Similar situation as Amy. We actually work with each other all over the state. AT&T Mobility is going to be bringing hopefully a solution to some of these issues that we're seeing. I saw that the police chief was looking to buy, additional two-way radio equipment. The fire chief has their own communication system that they maintain. One of AT&T's objectives is through a project called the FirstNet, and it's going to be a dedicated cellular network for first responders. And so it's going to take some of these issues and hopefully be able to streamline them at a national level so that AT&T has the contract all over the country to be able to provide immediately emergency response access to first responders so that police, fire, rescue can use the cellular network when, in a case of emergency, when everyone's trying to call their mom to see if they're okay, the first responders will get priority on that network. So that's part of AT&T's build out, and that's why I'm here today, is to not just get the approval for the AT&T antennas that will provide service to the general population in Tier C, but it will also be dedicated to the first responders. So that hopefully in the future you don't have to maintain 3 separate networks and trying to give priority to public safety. That's what FirstNet's designed to do with AT&T's $7 billion government funding behind it, so that their generators don't run out of gas and that they make sure that there's no interference with their radios. So just kind of a big picture for you that some of these local issues will be resolved in the future. But for today, yeah, the idea is to get the approval for the AT&T antennas, and then in addition to that, then Gravity Pad is a local company. I'm actually up in Albuquerque, and so we manage a lot of communication sites. We work with Advanced Communications to do the maintenance, but I think our proposal is then to have the lease between the city and Gravity Pad as the site manager, and then we take all those responsibilities for the structural analysis, making sure that the tank has got proper coding and properly grounded, and we just sort of work as the communications agent for both Verizon and AT&T. So that's, I guess, when the lease agreement comes in, we'll address the lease between Gravity Pad and the city, and then Gravity Pad has leases with Verizon and AT&T. So again, I'm just here for the special use permit for the antennas, but similar to Amy, we'll be going into the next phase. So I don't know if you guys have any questions specifically.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments, Manager Madrid?
No.
Commission. Attorney Rubin.
Well, I just wanted to clarify, there was some discussion about this. I know, Ms. McKenzie, you're here in the audience. I understand there is no conflict between you and Gravity Pad. Is there anything regarding the action we took with you that's not going to create any conflict that Mr. Winter is
Winter.
That he's suggesting? Is there anything we should know?
No, it's really just a matter of who is Verizon going to lease with. So we're either going to be leasing with the city directly, or if the city has entered into an agreement with Gravity Pad as their agent, then Gravity Pad will take the lead on leasing with any of the carriers. So I don't mean this rudely, but he would be the middleman if we did not deal with the city directly.
He'd be the landlord, and you'd be the...
Yeah, and so we're basically a communication infrastructure company, so we have towers all over the city and the state. We've done this in Corrales and Rio Rancho and some of the pueblos where, rather than the city having to sort of worry about, maintaining access to the tank, that's something that Gravity Pad does to make sure that, it's basically you have one person to call. You call me if you have an issue, if the weeds need to be cut or something, you call me, and we have more of a little bit of a focused approach. I mean, like AT&T and Verizon, they have maintenance teams, but it just goes into a queue and then they subcontract it. Whereas Gravity Pad, we have our own crews that we deal with this all the time, so.
Tracy, do you have any comments on this? Could you come forward and are we leasing directly with, or is Verizon leasing directly with the city, or are they going through Gravity Pad? I mean, to me, that's a question, so.
So Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, I think at this point it would be at the Commission's discretion to decide whether or not we wanted to formulate a lease direct with Gravity Pad and then have them oversee, they would at that time oversee the entire tank, and they would, any future and other cell phone towers that want to be put on would therefore go through Gravity Pad. And they would have pretty much sole, what's the word I'm looking for?
Responsibility and oversight.
So we'd be as the city, we'd kind of be giving that up for the entire tower itself. Whereas if we entered directly in with just Verizon, then we would have to enter in individual lease with each individual cell tower company. So that would be the Commission's discretion.
Manager Madrid.
Madam Mayor, I would recommend that our position be non-committal at this time, that we work with whoever we can establish a relationship first with, because I've seen the agreement, a proposed agreement, the terms are very different. The rights and responsibilities are very different, and basically, I think we need to take a very good look at it, myself and the attorney, and make sure that the relationship is established properly and without sacrificing any of the city's rights or responsibilities.
Thank you. So at this time, this is just a special use permit, again, like with Verizon?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so we have basically identified this opportunity to AT&T. So Gravity Pad, we build towers for AT&T. In this situation, we were aware of this tower. We approached the city to put up a new one, kind of led to the tank and, what Verizon was doing. So we're trying to sort of make it more synergistic for all the carriers. And so that's why we're trying to already, put all the carriers in one place so that you don't have 3 requests for new towers. That's what you see in some of the other cities. And we also work with T-Mobile. So the goal would be then to bring T-Mobile in as well. And then the ongoing maintenance, there is times when the carriers do want to change out their antennas, and typically they, either get consent or they send a letter. I mean, we've seen situations where we've built a new tower in March, and then in May, they're already changing out their antennas. And so this is just an effort to keep the staff from being inundated with, and they're not a big deal, but it's like, hey, we just want to know, is it okay if we put this equipment on? And so we just want to streamline that, going forward. So that's something that, Gravity Pad and the we can work out with you guys. But yeah, for today, it's just a special use request. It's just, you guys have a unique opportunity because, I've worked with Amy in the past, and we're able to try and use the same location, and that's why we have AT&T and Verizon, and then eventually T-Mobile all go on the same tank. And it keeps, from having to have 3 facilities built, and it keeps you guys from having to deal with a bunch of different companies. So that's why we're here today, and it's working out so far so good. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further questions?
Well, I have to admit, I'm a little confused because in H1, we approved the special use permit. The fact that there were going to be these noise studies done by the chief, and then we were going to negotiate a lease. If we now put the special use permit on H2, which would, I guess, contemplate negotiating a lease with Gravity Pad, does that negate what we just did for H1? And would the noise study still be accomplished? So
yeah, so no worries. We'll still want the noise study, and in fact, we're going to want to add AT&T's modulation study to the noise base level as well. So that I'll need to work with the fire chief to get that information. So that Advanced Communication will do the noise study for both Verizon and AT&T. And then AT&T and Verizon have already been working behind the scenes to make sure that there's going to be separation amongst their antennas, so there's not any interference. So I would accept the same conditions that were approved for H1, which would be, it's contingent on having a non-interfering noise study, and then also contingent on having a written or lease agreement, because AT&T will need a lease agreement as well. We already have an AT&T agreement with Gravity Pad because we do this for them all over the state, and so that's already in place, but our agreement with the city would still need to be negotiated, so as separate from the special use approval.
So you would do the same exact things that Verizon has to do?
Yeah, and I think if the agreement was benign, I mean, there does need to be agreement between the city, Gravity Pad, and Verizon and AT&T. So we're going to try and do one site license agreement that covers the operation of the tank, the responsibility of the city, the responsibility of Gravity Pad, and then the carrier's responsibility as part of this communications facility. So it's pretty cool that you guys have, everyone working collaboratively at the same time. When I've done it in the past, one company comes in and the other one's in the way, and they have kind of not worked well together, but because sites are more important and because we're trying to build so many sites, the coming of 5G, we really having to find ways to work, collaboratively together, and that's what you see, here today. So it's pretty cool that it's, the industry has shifted from competing to more collaborating, and so that's what we're a part of.
And again, we would ask that you work with the manager as well as the chief and the attorney on your lease agreements and all the content and everything that needs to be in there properly, so that the city and the fire chief and the safety departments and everybody know exactly where we're going and what we're doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We welcome the opportunity. We've done this, like I said, in other communities, and it works out well. There's also a capital contribution that Gravity Pad makes to give the city some financial relief as well for the use of the tank. So it works out well.
Mr. Winter, a moment ago, you said we would have an agreement with Gravity Pad, an agreement with Verizon, an agreement with
AT&T, yeah.
But Mr. Kennedy's understanding is if we reach an agreement with you, we would not have an agreement with Verizon. I mean, then
it wouldn't be directly with Verizon, but Gravity Pad would have an agreement with Verizon. So the city would have a lease with Gravity Pad for the facility, for the tank and the ground space, and then Gravity Pad has what we call subleases. Well, we sublease to AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. But the agreement between Verizon and Gravity Pad is something that we've already sort of worked through and approved the terms. It's just a matter of getting them onto paper, getting the city's lease worked out.
Yeah, I am too. Can I ask you a question? Yeah, please. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
No, I was going to ask the mayor if I could talk to you.
Sure. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So, here's my memory.
Yes.
We sent you away twice, and then we invited you back.
Yes, ma'am.
And one of the things this commissioner said to you is because you approached us first,
Yes.
that it was important that we honor that.
Yes, ma'am.
And the concern was we didn't have an AT&T line in our city,
Right.
and we really wanted it. And AT&T, we were told, was going to be at least a year and a half out. So now this Gravity outfit can come in, put AT&T on there. I'm having some really lack of clarity, Attorney Rubin, on if we have two special use permits and you're representing Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile.
No, I'm representing AT&T at this hearing
That's
today.
all.
Right. Correct.
So, Ms. McKenzie, are you okay if we gave a special use permit but for AT&T, not the whole rest of this whole thing?
Yeah, and if I can try to uncomplicate this just a little bit.
Please,
if we look, I'm trying to do that too. So if we just looked at this as a zoning matter today and take the lease equation out of it, I'm coming before you, I came before you and got approved for my application. So for Verizon's antennas at 45 feet at these three azimuths. AT&T, aka Gravity Pad, he's the agent, just like I'm an agent. He's their agent, AT&T's agent. He's proposing, I don't know what you're proposing, what height or what azimuths, but whatever in his application, you're approving AT&T's location on the water tank at those three different azimuths as well. So you're just approving today the zoning applications and the placements for Verizon and AT&T on the water tank. The second portion of it is where it gets muddy, is who's leasing who's doing what. If I took these folks out of the equation and it was just Verizon coming along, then we would be directly leasing with the city, and I would be only negotiating with the city attorney and the city manager on the lease. What Gravity Pad is coming in, again, you guys are the landlord, they're essentially a property manager, and they would be managing the water tank on behalf of the city, and so then they would enter into any subleases with Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, whomever. So really what the question for the city is assuming that they get their approval for their SUP as well. Now you've got 2 approved SUPs. Now the city has to make the decision, how do we want to lease these to them? And so really there are 2 options. You lease directly with the provider, so the city leases with Verizon, the city leases with AT&T, the city leases with whomever comes on down the road, or you can enter into a kind of a property management agreement. And these are just my terms, just to kind of make it a little easier to understand. You could enter into a property management agreement for the property, which is the tank and the ground space, with Gravity Pad. And then once that lease is in place with the city and Gravity Pad, then Gravity Pad would then turn to Verizon, AT&T, and whomever else, frankly, to enter into a sublease agreement. So at the direction of the commission, when AT&T kind of, bubbled into the mix, we did speak with Gravity Pad, and I basically, I've done the devil and the angel, because I want to make sure both sides of me are covered. I can enter, on behalf of Verizon, I can enter into a lease directly with the city, or if the city's preference is to work with a property manager with Gravity Pad, then I'm prepared to do that as well. And so I've already spoken to them about, what needs to happen for us to protect our rights, because that was my concern, Ms. Clark, as we talked about being, first in the door. I wanted to protect Verizon's spot on the water tank. I wanted to protect not only the height, but also the azimuths, because I didn't want to have interference. I didn't want to have any kind of an issue. And that I was able to discuss with AT&T. So right now, Verizon is good with whatever the direction of the city is, whether we lease directly with you all or we lease with a property management company.
Thank you, Ms. Amy, for your explanation. Is there any questions?
Just one question is that if we approve your special permit, sir, then we are still able to come forward and negotiate on the lease. That's my understanding.
Right.
And if that's the case, then I would request that our new city manager negotiate the best lease possible in favor of the city.
Right, Commissioner, I believe this leaves all our options open, and that's the way, that would be our recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions, discussions, comments? Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept the special use permit for mounting antennas on the painted water tank hill at the end of West 2nd Street? Applicant is AT&T Mobility by Kevin Winter, as presented by Kevin Winter. Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am, you have that motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Are there any discussion? Is there any discussion?
Are you happy with this?
Well, I think what we're doing is we're just approving the special use permit. It's contingent upon us entering into a subsequent lease. So I think what's going to probably happen is that I would expect the city manager will be contacting me, and he'll probably go over the Gravity Pad lease first, because we'll see if it's in our best interest to see whether it makes sense to actually just deal with Gravity Pad and then deal with the other entities. But it looks like a lease cannot be worked out with Gravity Pad, and we'd probably just go with auction fee and just go just work directly with Verizon. So I think
Well stated, Mr. Attorney, that's exactly
This is
correct.
just approving the special use
Yes.
permit at this time. We still
Right.
have to negotiate the leases and make sure that those are all in our favor or what we need. Questions? Comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
And I think what kind of gives me a little bit of a question is if we decide to do it directly with Gravity Pad, Ms. Kennedy has already stood up and said that she feels comfortable she could work directly with Gravity Pad if we come to that. So
We have 9 leases with
Yeah.
Verizon.
So I don't think we'd like to franchise Verizon by making the motion in favor of Gravity Guys, so that's how I see it.
So we have 2 leases that we're looking at, correct? One with Gravity Pad and one with Verizon, and if we want to merge, then we have that option to do too also.
Well, it's not a merge.
Not a merge, but
Yeah, it's going to be one or the other.
Property.
I completely understand the city, you know, wants to look at their options, so we'll provide our lease to city manager and city attorney, and you guys can, you know, weigh apples to apples.
Thank you. Okay, our next item on the agenda this morning is item I1, under new business, discussion review only. Review of the impact fee study and approve staff to proceed forward with final adoption procedures. Tracy Burnett, our grant projects coordinator.
Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Commissioners, we have included within our packet the impact fee study. The Impact Fee Advisory Board has recommended the study to the Commission for review and final adoption procedures. The study was reviewed and approved by the board as well as staff, as well as both our attorneys, Jay Rubin and John Appel. The next step is for final adoption procedures, which would then consist of drafting a proposed ordinance to adopt the land use assumptions and capital improvement plan without changing any of the impact fees, and then presentation of that ordinance to the commission for publication, a publication of notice in the form required by the state statute, and public hearing before the commission and action eventually to adopt that ordinance. So at this time, we're requesting that commission approve us to proceed forward with the final adoption procedures. And with any, we do apologize, Molson Corbin was going to try and be here today to answer any questions. Unfortunately, they had a conflict in schedule. Mr. Appel had stated that if there are any questions or concerns regarding anything within the study, to email them to myself and City Manager Madrid, and then we can send those over to Mr. Appel to review, and he could answer any questions as well.
Do we have any comments, questions, concerns?
Help.
Well, yes, you can raise your question. Go ahead.
I have a little bit of a problem having this conversation about impact fees. And the reason I have it is because we're in court over that particular subject. And unless, you know, did you say, Ms. Burnett, that the impact fees are not going to be changed?
Correct. What's within the study here, and I believe that the end result didn't change the impact fee amounts at all.
Can I get a little clarification from our SPUAB board chair and from the vice chair, please?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Zaghetti.
Okay, the numbers just worked out that way. We spent a lot of time, and Mr. Dornbush can back me up on it. We spent a lot of time discussing the basic parameters which were used to plug into the formula to determine these fees. There were a lot of negotiations up and down and all that, but and also as to what items could be included in the cost amount that was being projected to determine those. And again, it was just coincidentally that when they put all of those numbers together and performed the calculation, it came out to, was it $148 and some odd cents, which is almost exactly $150 per fixture unit, which is what we have now. So essentially what this study did is affirm the fact that our impact fees are reasonable at the level where they are set now. So now if we had something where all of a sudden, there was a much greater growth projected, or some other improvements would be required because of the projected growth, and then we would have to refigure that, and again, based on the numbers, that impact fee may go up or down. But like I said, it was just a coincidental thing that it worked out to that value. And $150 per fixture unit, and for the 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, which we projected as being the typical new construction, that comes out to $3,000 per home, and which is right where it is now.
Commissioner Clark, let me give you a little bit of comfort if I can. First of all, let's talk about what's on the agenda today. It's just discussion review, so there's not going to be any action taken today. As I understand, Mr. Burnett, what we're doing is we're just discussing what's here, and then we're going to come back with an ordinance, which would then be reviewed, as our ordinary course of business. We would go to publication, and we'd come back for final adoption. So there's still some more steps we have to take.
Correct. The only action we're requesting is for them to allow us to go forward with the final procedures.
Okay, so we're still going to be able to go through this, go through the process. We're not doing that today, going through the actual ordinance that you're going to be looking at. Now, I think I want to give you credit, Commissioner Clark. You called me yesterday and expressed a couple of concerns about the procedure here. And I think your concern is one of the members of the board happens to be corporateless. Is that by hearing what your concern is? And what gives me some comfort about this is that Mr. Appel is the one who actually took the lead in drafting a lot of this. Am I correct?
Correct, yes.
I know you don't have to give me credit, but really Mr. Appel was the one that was doing most of the heavy lifting. This is kind of...
He very thoroughly reviewed and sent it back and forth with the engineer multiple times.
He's already aware of what's going on. He's the one who made recommendations, and he's the one who's representing us in the court proceeding involving, the board member.
Correct.
So the recommendation I had made throughout, during the course of the litigation was, I suggested that Mr. Appel should be getting together with the board member's attorney, and they should work out really what role should be played here by the board member as to whether it wants the attention of the court. I don't know that it really affects us in the sense of direction of Mr. Appel. He can or can't do something regarding that. So that's what I'm thinking.
And Mr. Appel will be at the next meeting that we would present for the public hearing portion of it to answer any questions. He's just, really, you're doing a very thorough review, allowing us to go ahead and proceed forward with that step to bring it back, for the public hearing. Between now and then, any questions, concerns can be emailed. If we could consolidate all of those to one email, then we could forward them to Mr. Appel at that time, and he'll be ready to either answer prior to the meeting, if as necessary, or be available here at the meeting in person to answer any questions or concerns.
Is he coming here? Is he coming here for the hearing or the meeting when we just go to publication, or just when we have the final hearing?
He said he would be available for any and all meetings that the commission would like to have him here, as he understands that this is a big document and wants to ensure everybody's comfortable with.
So maybe Commissioner Clark, what we can do is when we come back here and have this on the agenda for publication, maybe have Mr. Appel through telephonically so we can maybe address some of these questions.
Well, my big concern is if we're in litigation for something that's on our books as it currently stands, and then we make modifications to that while we're still in litigation, what does that do to us?
I don't know off the top of my head what would do anything, because again, I'm emphasizing the fact that the attorney who represents the court actually is the one who put this together, or had to play a large role in putting this together.
Correct.
So he's had full knowledge of really what's going on, and feels this is in our best interest. Is what I'm hearing.
Ms. Tracy, is there, could you ask Attorney Appel the question that Mayor Pro Tem has brought to our attention about the litigation, being in...
Correct. I'll see if this would have, moving forward with this, would have any bearing whatsoever on the current litigation going on.
Okay,
That's
I
good.
agree.
Yeah, that's good.
Mr. Clark, that actually would be a good question to ask. I agree. Okay, I should be just,
I think
agree that's a good question to ask.
I thank you for your comments, Attorney Rubin, but again, if John Appel is the one that's helping and being available for this, then we need to ask him that question. because it is a concern, because of the litigation, and then we're moving forward. If there's no issues, then I don't see a problem. Also, on this agenda today, it says discussion review, so we, as a commission, really can't make any action as to asking staff to proceed forward, correctly, or?
No, that's my point, right?
Yeah.
That's why I think it's okay just to discuss this in broad terms like we are. And I certainly agree and welcome you to ask the questions of Mr. Appel as opposed to myself, actually.
Thank you.
We're involved in litigation, et cetera, so, yes.
Madam Mayor, if I might interject, I do recall an executive session that we did have with Attorney Appel regarding this exact thing, and he did provide an explanation. I can, I've got my notes on it that I can refer to and share with you.
Okay, well, since we're not making a decision on this today, I think I'm okay, as long as we can get that affirmation from Mr. Appel that this would not have any effect on our litigation at all. For our
And that's just a question to ask, you know, and then he can
Yes.
give his comments, and then we can feel comfortable, Mayor Pro Tem Clark can feel more comfortable with us proceeding forward with this at this time.
Yeah, Mayor, I'd like to make one more comment. And if we do have a motion today to approve staff to proceed, instead of saying something like final adoption procedures, maybe we can say preliminary adoption procedures, so we don't paint ourselves into a corner. And that way we know that we're gonna have some leeway and some time to deal with this issue.
Well, it doesn't
Well,
say
there's
action.
no action, so we
It
can't
just
take
says
any action
discussion
on this.
review.
It's discussion review.
Well, we can't approve staff to proceed with the preliminary adoption
We
procedures.
can't.
Well, I think,
Can we?
I don't think we really should take any action, however, I think it's clear what the intent is, that this, as Ms. Burnett has outlined, that we will be in touch with Mr. Appel, and we will be bringing something back to you for to review with Mr. Appel's being available. So I think that's where we are.
As discussion, yes, she understands that our intent is
Correct.
that, yeah. Okay. Is there any other questions or comments?
Ms. Burnett, are you good with this?
Very good, yes, thank you.
Very good. Look at the smile. All right, their next item, thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda this morning is item J, reports, city manager.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, thank you. This is my report for this meeting. This is 2 days
It's
of...
gonna get bigger.
I'm sure. That's why I'm showing it off, because although it's brief, believe me, it's been filled with knowledge gained, people met, and a lot of collaboration and introduction to new things, new people, a new team. And I want to compliment the staff for being open and very honest and candid with me. That started with members of the commission that I met that showed me where all the alligators were. They're there. They're hungry. But I'm not going to let them get us. We'll be okay. Renee has been outstanding. Thank you, Renee. I would have been lost this week without her. I'm going to lean on her a lot more. Hopefully her life will get back to normal soon. But I started off just meeting a lot of the staff. I spent some time in human resources getting some issues resolved, getting some decisions made. I expect some more of those things that will take place this week. There are some hiring issues that we've identified that we need to concentrate on. We have issues in some of the departments. We have director positions that need to be filled. We have staffing positions, for example, in wastewater and water that we're working on. You know, we will attract hopefully good people, get positions filled, relieve some of the burden. There's a lot of areas where the staff has been overburdened to the point where I wouldn't blame them if they just gave up. We're asking them not to. I've also had a meeting with some of the other officials, with Sierra County and Elephant Butte manager, the mayor of Williamsburg. We are going to be meeting on a monthly basis to see what type of collaboration we can do among our entities and our common interests. Things like sharing of staff positions, where one is too many for any one of us, but can be shared amongst the 3 or 4 of us. Those are the things that we'll be looking at. And any other areas that are in our common interests. I know that, you know, we're going to bring forth a lot of ideas. I guarantee you that you'll always be informed and that you will be given options. I think that being a little newer to this community, I'm going to depend on you as much as you depend on me for a direction and a priority. And I know I'll be soon meeting with every one of you, and then hopefully we can gather a meeting collectively to share those. I think Commissioner Clark had a wonderful idea. We want to hear yours first, and I think that's a very, very good approach, because it forces me to be objective, and that's exactly what I want to do. The other thing is, I attended a Rotary meeting and an airport committee, and everywhere I go, I find a new issue that needs to be dealt with. And my response to that is not, oh my gosh, that's why I'm here. And I look forward to a good working relationship with all of you and with the community. And again, I thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Manager Madrid, and again, welcome aboard. The next is Attorney Rubin. Do you have a report?
I will just comment, I got a chance to finally work with Mr. Madrid, I'm looking forward to it, so welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Next is City Commission report. We'll start with our newest City Commissioner, Mr. Zaghetti.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to take a few minutes here, but first of all, I really want to thank my fellow commissioners and Commissioner Green for their confidence in nominating me for this position. Like I said, I'm really thankful for your confidence. As some of you may know, it took an awful lot of arm twisting to get me to agree to this. But I'm really thankful to Steve Green. I respect him deeply, and I consider this as really a personal favor to him for his support and friendship over the years. Now, I've spent most of my life working for the government in various areas, and since I retired here 8 years ago, I've spent almost all of that time working with the city in various arenas, particularly the PUAB. And the one thing I've learned, that no matter what you do, somebody's not going to be happy. It's just the way things work. But the worst thing you can do is to do nothing, because then everybody's unhappy. I think it's important to go in and look at a little history once in a while. And I'm not going to go back very far, because to a previous time when we had a vacancy on the board, and there's always discussion when these vacancies happen and somebody gets on the board by whatever means. But it was just a couple of years after I came out here in July 2012 when Commissioner Freddie Torres passed away, creating a vacancy on the board. And it was not resolved as quickly as this vacancy was. And let me just go through the history there, just to illustrate what happened and how much latitude the commission actually has in making the decision how to fill a vacancy. Because I think it's important for people to know. The law simply says that in the case of a vacancy, the commission shall appoint a replacement. Doesn't say anything about how. But anyway, the July 24th meeting, the 2 people were nominated to fill the vacancy. Both of them were voted to a 2-2 tie. August 14th, 3 candidates were nominated with either a tied votes or the nomination wasn't seconded. August 28th, 1 candidate was renominated with the justification that that person was the runner-up to that seat, the Freddie seat, at the previous election. And that again came up to a tie vote, and the possibility of election was raised. On September 25th, then Mayor Mulcahy twisted my arm and I agreed to stand for that position. It was brought before the commission, and again it was a tie vote. And I may note that Commissioners Green and Whitehead both voted against me at the time. All right. On October 9th, the discussion was postponed over a legal question. On October 22nd, it was proposed that they fill the commission seat by drawing a name out of a hat. And a discussion with the city attorney and the municipal league said, yes, that was permissible as long as it was done in a fair and open way, where each commissioner would put their name on a slip of paper and their candidate, and they would throw it into a hat, and an independent third person would then draw a name out of the hat, and that person would get the seat, as long as all of the slips were read in public, so it was an open procedure. Again, that was perfectly legitimate. However, that motion died for lack of a second. On November 13th, there was a call for a special election. The election resolution on December 11th, and finally on March of 2013, the replacement was elected. This had an elapsed when that vacancy concerned. I think, it's very good when a group can get together and come to a quick resolution on an issue like this and not have to drag it out for such a long period of time. And I'd say the same no matter who they chose for the position. And that's all I have. Thank you.
And it's funny that Mayor Green and Commissioner Whitehead voted no for you, and then now we put you. Congratulations and thank you. Commissioner Baca, report?
Nothing.
Commissioner Clark?
I have a couple of things to say. One, thank you, Commissioner Suggetti, because I know it was not an easy decision. And it was Sandy that really changed the whole game here. So she flipped. We're glad that she did.
I do that occasionally.
Not very often. There are 3 people in this room, Mayor Whitehead, if you don't mind, I would like to say something.
Sure, go right ahead.
Ms. Canton, you have done an extraordinary job. I know you've worked till 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Saturdays,
Sundays, 7:30 in the morning, every morning. And it just says an awful lot to this commissioner about your heart. Thanks. Okay, gather myself. I've been the biggest crybaby up here. Ms. Burnett, can I ask you to come up here for a minute, please? This is another one. Now, this lady has not only taken the grant position that she had, but she also added on the P&Z. And I know that she won't admit it, that you have gone the extra mile for us, too.
Thank you.
And here I am crying again, but thanks. The last one, Ms. Torres, if you have a minute, so you can say thank you in the mic. I know it hasn't been easy for you either. all the short staff. But I do know your dedication, and I want to personally thank you for hanging in there also, because I know it hasn't been easy. And I'm glad you're feeling better, and that you're sitting in the audience today, and that you're going to be here to back up our manager. So thank you also.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't think I can do any more.
No more? Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Heschel.
In the interest of expediency, I have no report. However, I wanted to thank Manny from Madrid for coming aboard. Thank you very much. And I just want to say something to Mr. Zagetti, and I appreciate his history lesson. We've come a long way in this commission, and although this commission doesn't always agree on everything, we do agree to work hard, and we do agree to work together. So thank you guys for your service and for serving with us. Thank you.
Thank you. And my report hopefully will be short. Won't be as long as previous Mayor Steve Green. But anyway, I would like to thank my fellow commissioners for their support and confidence in me as being nominated and appointed the mayor. I welcome all your ideas and thoughts. Attorney Rubin, thank you for being on board. Chief Aragon, Manager Madrid, I hope we can work very close together. I look forward to working the next 14 months with everyone. And again, I ditto every comment that Mayor Pro Tem Clark made. Renee, you've done an outstanding job. Melissa, Tracy, everyone, you all just seem to be over and above your call of duty, and we really, really appreciate that, and thank you. I also have another couple of comments that I would like to make, and I know that there is a Facebook post that I saw this last week that we got some donated service, and I would like to ask Chief Aragon to the podium to talk about that and to recognize the person that donated the service and how much we appreciate that and thank them for that.
Mayor White and Commissioners, City Manager. Yeah, it was a surprise to me. Facebook post told it all. I hope maybe you read it, maybe you haven't. But I got a call from Rob. Robin's the volunteer coordinator for the shelter, and she keeps me in touch with what needs to be done. And she mentioned the dryers broke down there, and we use it every day in the shelter. So we had one person working the shelter at that point, Justin. So I called this gentleman that I call him my fix-it man. He was the guy that fixed the stuff in my apartment, and Commissioner Zagetti knows Chris Cisney. And it's a good knowing. Anyway, I called Chris and I said, look, we have an issue at the shelter, told him the story, and I had the key, so I said, no one's down there, can you meet me there? He met me there, and I said, look at it, tell me what's wrong with the dryer, and we'll work up an invoice, we'll do the PO bid and so forth. So he started working on it, and he's amazing. He could look at something and tell what's wrong with it. Just about 20 minutes later, he said, I'm coming back in the morning. I said, wait a minute, you can't fix anything. I can't obligate city funds. So he said, I'm coming back in the morning to fix it. I said, you can't, Chris. And he said, this is on me. I am donating my time to fix this thing. And I said, oh my gosh. So in the morning it was fixed, and I put a comment on the Facebook page, and it's about 180 likes. And I called him to ask for his autograph. He's a celebrity now. But Chris is just a down-to-earth guy, and you wouldn't believe the people in our community that appreciated that. And I must say, we didn't ask for it. He did it. And I thank you, Mayor, for recognizing him for his noble action.
And that was a nice gesture on Facebook, but I felt it was important that you presented that since you handled it and you are the officer in charge of animal control. And again, thank you, the department, and Chris for his donation.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. I also want to comment on another person that is not here who has been very active, and that is our acting city clerk, which was Angela Torres. She also has done an outstanding job, not only as doing the clerk's job, but her doing her own job, and now she's also attending to a special all-mail ballot election, and she is doing an outstanding job on that. And I would hope that this is relayed to her, the comments, and she's been a great source of help for the city. Also, there is one thing that I would like to propose, and I would like for my fellow commissioners to think about it. I have talked to the clerk, and I have mentioned a little bit to our new manager, is some rules of procedure regarding our meetings. And this is just something for you to think about, and if we can put it on the agenda for some action at a later date, I'd like to do that. But as we have 2 meetings a month, I would like for our first meeting of the month to be a meeting where we have public comment, response to public comment as we do. Any presentations, anything that needs to come forward, to be thought about, to be acknowledged, to be reviewed by the commission. You know, there are a few things that we'll need to take, we will need to take action on at that meeting, and those would be standard, such as our consent calendar, and we could work out the litigations if they could be placed on the consent calendar at that time and just move forward. The second meeting of the month would be considered strictly, and I know they're both considered business meetings, but the second meeting of the month would be a business meeting where that we would look and take action on any item that was presented at the first meeting. We would not have public comment. We would not have response to public comment, but if anybody wanted to comment on something that was discussed or talked about during the first meeting, they could email the manager, they could email the clerk, or they could email us directly. So I would think that that would kind of shorten up a little bit of the meetings. Maybe the first meeting, it would make it a little more lengthy, but that would also give us, the commission, time to review any presentations and give the public time to come in. I do know that Ron Fenn mentioned in his public comment or in the public hearing this morning that, you know, he would like to have something presented and then the next meeting to vote on it. So this would give us an opportunity to maybe do that. Again, you know, it's just something that I've thought about for a very long time. It's just something that I wanted to bring to your attention so that you can think over it, talk about it, and go from there. I do have one other comment to make. I do know that there was an incident a few days ago that involved law enforcement. I want to thank all the law enforcement agencies that were involved. The situation was brought under control and to a close with no injuries. And I want to thank our law enforcement, state police, county, and our local city officers. And that's all I have to say. That's the longest I've talked forever. Gosh, Steve's rubbing up.
I think the chair's rubbing up.
We have to change the chair. Do we have any other comments, questions, anything? If not, I would stand for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn, Mayor.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So moved. All those in favor? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you.